More cowbells. More cowbell. So thanks for coming, everyone. We're going to start our announcements. There is beer and pizza in the kitchen area. Feel free to drift in and out and grab as much as you like. So I'm Matthew Bodas. I'm one of just 3 organizers for Salesforce. This really is a team effort. We also have Ami Asag and Kurt Stefke, who are probably herding people in from the kitchen area, but you will definitely see them around. If you've got questions or ideas for talks, or better yet, you actually want to give a talk at some point, we'd love to hear about it. So just a few announcements before we get to our talk. How many people found out about us through Meetup? Awesome. That's probably 50-60% of the crowd. So we switched to Meetup a few months ago, and it's been a really great way for us to tap into the broader tech community, and it's a great way, once you get on Meetup, to find other related groups that are doing technology here in Philadelphia. So free to sign up. Email traffic is not bad. You'll get some announcements about our upcoming events. Like everybody else, we are also on Twitter, so we tend to also advertise our meetups and events and kind of some other interesting cloud stuff that's going on in the Philadelphia area. So if you're on Twitter, you can certainly follow us there. We are also now on YouTube. So tonight's presentation is being recorded. We'll get that uploaded to our YouTube channel. You'll also find several of our past presentations there. So if you have colleagues that were interested, or you missed one or couldn't make it, it's a great way to catch up. So Spring 13 is out. How many folks have done their Spring 13 maintenance exam? I'm the only one? Will I get a prize? I guess not.
Go back. How many have done their winter?
How many people have done the winter 13? Which I think, well, when did that ended? Like a week or 2 ago, and they were blasting out the tweets at high volume to remind people. So in doing our part, we have a nice short URL for you. So bit.ly SF-spring-13 will take you right to the training videos. It's only 20 or 30 minutes of kind of video training. It's 6 or 7 question quiz, keeps your certifications current, lets you know the latest and greatest stuff going on the platform. So we're really excited about April. We're going to be participating in Philly Tech Week, which is a real amalgam of everything technology in the Philadelphia area. You've got a lot of different groups and meetups and events all in a 1-week time span. We're going to be doing an afternoon series of talks that Ami and Kirk have been instrumental in putting together. So we're going to have Michael Fawcett, who gave a talk last year, will be kind of our keynote speaker. We also have a presentation from Suma and a few more sponsors who will be revealed in the coming month. This will be an event back here in Philadelphia. We'll be at the Hub City View, which is a really nice meeting location. How many folks are based in Center City or the Philadelphia proper area here? Oh, great. So we've got 5 or 6 new folks. This was kind of our first, I guess our second downtown meetup after Cloudforce Philadelphia in January. So we're going to try to mix it up a little bit more and make sure we get to a broader audience. So please let your friends and colleagues know that we will be in town from time to time. We're also very grateful to have ZivTech and Alex hosting us tonight. It's a great location, and we really appreciate the support. And like every Phillyforce event, we will be clearing out of here so everyone of our hosts can go home. And in the meantime, we'll go to the bar. So we'll be at McGillen's, which is the same location we were at for the Cloudforce Philadelphia event. It is almost literally right around the corner, so just follow the crowd. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker tonight, Peter Coffey. So you've probably seen Peter doing the pregame show for Dreamforce and Cloudforce. He will be the opening keynote speaker at Forum Philly tomorrow over at World Cafe Live. Should be a very interesting event. Peter was telling me the CIO of the CIA?
I think he's CIO, yeah.
And
we've got the CIA, we've got the author of Wikinomics, we've got an amazing program tomorrow. I'll talk about that briefly.
So, really good lineup, and yeah, Peter's day job is the Vice President for Platform Technology at Salesforce.com, so a pretty unique perspective on the platform and our industry and where things are going.
Thank you. Do you mind if I replug here? Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you. saying, do you think you could send us your charts 2 months before the event? And I said, what, you want them to be 3 years old in cloud time? It's typical that there will be at least something that I will have added the same day. Maybe can we just cut the front lights? I don't want people necessarily going to sleep, but that's
I think we only have one light switch.
Well, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
I don't think people are going to go to sleep quite yet. You haven't had that much beer. Okay, great. A while ago, I wrote a blog post in which I got angry about the word cloud. We didn't pick it. The market picked it. We were calling it on-demand. IBM was calling it utility computing. As someone once said, if Hewlett-Packard started a sushi restaurant, they would call it a place to buy and eat raw fish. Perfectly accurate label, but not very inspiring. If you look at Google Trends, you'll find that the word cloud kind of bubbled up out of the marketplace. I keep reminding people, no one ever drew a cloud on a whiteboard to represent something they wanted to buy. And the notion that I can sell you servers, sell you software licenses, and now you've got a private cloud is kind of like selling, I'm going to give you a pilot's license and let you build a plane, and now you won't need airline tickets anymore. It's not exactly a baby step. It is about operating services. The other thing that I pointed out in the blog post is that the verb to cloud has no positive associations whatsoever. Clouding something is never good, as opposed to connecting things, which often is good. And I'm really happy, therefore, that after several years of fighting this cloud metaphor, which you can adapt to, seem to apply to just about anything, and after, I think, breaking some new ground and getting people to talk about social technologies and models in a business environment, the problem is many people hear the word social and all their defenses instantly click into place. They say, we're too serious to be social. Well, finally, we are on some nice concrete verbs at Salesforce.com. We are saying, look, let's sell, service, market, innovate. Let's connect with customers in new ways. You can't fake a verb, and I think the new messaging is going to be very effective in really clarifying the conversation in a lot of ways. In particular, I was struck by the fact that this picture of this Boeing drone with our Chatter mascot riding on it, which I've been using for a while, just to suggest the velocity of the market, actually turns out to have a really great meaning. It's above the cloud. So I'm going to keep using this imagery for a while, but with a new emphasis. We're still a publicly traded company. We still do the safe harbor statement. It still puts people to sleep. This is my version of our safe harbor statement, not approved by the corporate council. I will not be doing any future-oriented statements tonight. I will not be showing you any visions, roadmaps, or anything that isn't in actual use by actual customers to do actual cool stuff right now. So let's talk about getting the wire out of the way of the light path. I was in the room when Scott McGilly said this. Unfortunately, I don't remember exactly where it was. I think it was at a software development conference back when we had those. He said, things change. Someday, has anyone noticed those ridiculous AT&T ads where people are excited about the fact that now you can move the TV from one room to another? Does that really irritate anybody? That didn't used to be a really cool thing to be able to do. And the notion that anyone now thinks that's a new liberating thing to be able to do is kind of weird. But it made me realize that no one under the age of 25 calls it a digital camera. It's just a camera. Film camera would be a weird thing. No one calls it a cell phone anymore. It's just a phone. And I think we're really on the cusp of people thinking that it sounds kind of weird and quaint to call it cloud computing. What other kind is there? When was the last time you got any useful work done when you weren't actively connected to a live internet feed? How much do you ever get done today without relying on the fact that you're connected to sources of data and sources of function? It's really not a separate thing anymore. It's not a weird, strange thing. And in fact, the phrase digital camera gets a spike on Google every December, probably, when someone goes and buys their first one. But the phrase cloud computing peaked in search traffic a year and a half ago. I'm sorry. Cloud computing is not something that people ask to have explained to them anymore. The ones who need to know get it. In fact, I warn our account teams. Any prospect you meet has probably formed an opinion of this phrase cloud computing. Either they get it, and they will really resent your condescending, pandering explanation of it. There was a certain yacht racer who came out on stage at a major event in San Francisco a few months ago and gave a half-hour talk about Cloud Computing 101 that could have been given any time in the past 6 years. My wife is literally a rocket scientist. She does not follow our industry closely because she's busy with more complicated things. But at the end of the Yachtsman's opening talk, when he left the stage, she said, "Is that all?" She figured there's got to be a punchline coming here. He's got to be about to drop another shoe and talk about how, well, but we're going to completely change. And he didn't. He didn't. People don't like that. But the other thing people don't like is when they've made up their minds that cloud computing is dangerous hype that's going to get them all put in jail, and here you are trying to shove more hype down their throats. So I just tell people, do not use the phrase cloud computing. It won't make you any new friends. Talk about the things that people really want to do. Let's talk about those things. The cloud is only interesting because of the connections it enables. Some of you may have seen this diagram before. It looks like a map. It was not drawn by a map maker. It was drawn by an algorithm that a Facebook intern came up with, saying what would happen if we took every major city in the world and connected it with a line that was darker if they're farther apart and darker in proportion to the number of Facebook friend pairs that exist between those two cities. That's all. And you get a very recognizable map of the world, literally a map of the world in which you do business today. Even the exceptions have exceptions, because notice China's kind of absent, and yet it's not too hard to find Beijing, where all those lines come together. The people you want to sell to, the people you want to buy from, the people you want to partner with, the people whose intellectual property you would like to steal, I'm sorry, the people whose innovations you would like to imitate, are on that map. And that's just Facebook. I mean, if I were to overlay LinkedIn, if I were to overlay some of the other networks out there, you'd have the map of the world in which you compete today. And it's a very interesting social world in terms of things like Arab Spring, Netflix, Bank of America, but it starts to get really, really interesting when you look at brands like Coca-Cola and brands like Ford that have figured out that what they used to think was their product is just the anchor of a relationship that is actually their source of brand power. It's a really important idea. Michael Porter at Harvard said years ago, no one in his life ever wanted a drill bit, he just wanted a hole. Well, no one particularly wants to pay Coca-Cola's markup for sweetened, flavored, carbonated water. But what they're buying is a sense of shared experience, all the associations that that brand has. Thinking about your customer not as merely the purchaser of what you used to call your product, but as some buying into a community of experience that your brand represents. Now let's get a little more concrete about it. This is the social revolution. The websites of the Fortune 100 are the chirping cricket museums of past web practice. The traffic on the websites of the world's largest companies is not merely shrinking in relative terms. It's shrinking in absolute terms. Fewer visits to those sites now than there were over the past year. That's not where people go to discover you. They go to your Facebook page, or they go to company name added with sucks.com, where you will find lots of company names that have websites based on that pattern. I used to name examples. Too many of them are our customers. I do not name them anymore. But that's where they want to discover your brand. And if you screw this up, you screw it up big. I have a colleague who bought a high-end luxury vehicle a while ago. And the first post-sale interaction with the brand was a letter from the finance department saying, "We have not gotten your first payment." Well, since they had yet to send him the book of coupons with which to make said payments, that was a CRM 101 fail. Okay, they didn't have a good workflow that would say, yeah, we've done all the things we're supposed to do. Okay, now we can start asking where his payment is. Now, they didn't do any of that, but that's not actually a very interesting part of the story. This is what's interesting. Went to the company's Facebook page and posted a basically friendly note that said, look, I'm in man love with this car. I love this car. Why do you want me to hate you? And it sat there for more than 20 hours, accumulating more than 200 likes before they got around to reply. Now, someone in that company checked a box and said, yeah, we got a social engagement plan. No, you don't. You've built an echo chamber in which people who merely dislike you can now become actively rabid haters of you by reinforcing each other's dissatisfactions. Yeah, that's a social behavior, but it's not the one that you were intending to facilitate. So it's about connection. Now, I run into a lot of people who think that cloud is a boil the ocean thing. They'll say, oh no, there's some workloads not ready to go to the cloud. Well, that's perfectly true. And there's some assets that I don't put in the bank. But most of my stuff is in the bank because it protects most of it better. Now, cloud is not a whole bunch of separate cloudlets. That's the other perception I encounter. Well, oh my gosh, which cloud should I use? There's only one cloud. It's this open protocol, non-proprietary, network-accessible resource, and it's got some pockets that Amazon does commodity storage and computing in. It's got some pockets that Google does collaboration and search in. It's got pockets where we do open standard-based computing on a highly scalable model at Heroku side, and where we do business applications with a high application leverage model in the Force.com side. And they're all connected together. With what? Well, they're connected together with logistics data from FedEx, financial data from Hoover's. They're connected with the dark matter of your IT universe out there in your spreadsheets and your Word docs and your notes databases. And crucially, they're connected through all this stuff. Why did Dell buy Boomi? Why did IBM buy Cast Iron? Why is Informatica Service now available not only as software you run on a server, but as a pure cloud service? What about Java and .NET? Well, those are all there, so you can take the dangerous, toxic Chernobyl reactors of your legacy systems and get some value out of the things. You put a concrete cube around them. You don't go into that dangerous space and try to change anything, but you've got a big capital investment in them, and they're still putting out some power. So you use that. But then you connect them to systems of engagement based on the only growing platforms in the world, iOS and Android. Do you know that by the end of 2013, Windows will be the third most common way that people interact with computing devices? iOS and Android will be running on more devices than Windows by the end of this year, according to various forecasts. Windows 8 came out last year, and people said, oh, is that how well Windows is going to make the transition? For the first time ever, a new release of Windows depressed PC sales. Again, not in relative terms. They sold fewer machines last holiday season than they did the year before because people looked at Windows 8 and said, "Oh, okay, this is not a future. This is a transition plan." Now, if social were people talking to people, I could totally understand why major industrial firms would say this isn't relevant to me. It wouldn't be scalable. It wouldn't be automatable. It would just not be relevant. But increasingly, it's about connecting machines and processes as well as connecting people. For example, most of us know what OnStar is. GM went over to the MIT Media Lab a few years ago, and the MIT folks said, have you ever thought about what it would be worth to monetize the attention span of the owner of a car over the 5 to 15 years that they drive that car? It would make what you make on the car look like a footnote. And GM did the math and said, oh my gosh, you're so right. Now you can go down to your big box store and buy an OnStar FMV for my vehicle, which is a rear view mirror with OnStar built in, and retrofit OnStar to anything you want. Because that's where the money is. And OnStar is not just push the blue button and driver talks to concierge. The machine is now initiating almost half the traffic on the OnStar network. When you get a sensor-rich, telemetry-capable platform like the Volt, which is now going to be available in another package called the Cadillac ELR later this year, not only can it tell you things like your airbag just deployed, I hope you won't have a chance to test that feature in the field, it can tell you that your gas cap's open. It can tell you lots of stuff. How important is this? Well, there was one guy who reverse engineered a testing-only, non-disclosed API on the Volt to put up a website where people could opt in and be on a leaderboard of who's getting the best mileage out of their cool Volt. It's a passionate community, what can I tell you? It makes us Prius drivers look, positively lame. And when they changed that internal development-only API and broke that leaderboard, the reaction from the most active, vigorous opinion leader members of that Volt community was so vigorous that they had to go to the guy and say, oh, okay, well, tell you what, we'll open up the full formal API that we didn't think we were going to disclose so you can rebuild the leaderboard and have it work. They figured out that the API, to some people, was the product. And increasingly, that's the fact. Your product exists as the kernel of an API, which is the actual resource that you expose to a community, and their ability to add value is what makes you differentiated and interesting in the marketplace today. Now that's one aspect of it. That's the API side. Here's another side. Jeff Immelt at GE talks about 1% problems. Lots of industries have profit margins in the area of like 3 to 5%. If I can cut a core cost in that industry by 1%, I've just added their profitability by 30 to 20%. It's important. Now, if you take wind turbines, you can have fairly simple, dumb programmable controllers in those devices that optimize their behavior individually. But if you can have them talking to each other and optimizing behavior across an entire field of wind turbines and treat them as one big system, you can actually get another $1 million a year of added revenue out of a field of only 123 turbines. We're going to be building these things by tens and hundreds of thousands. They're going to be a major component of power generation. If we can get that kind of multiplier on that, this is a very significant thing. And you've seen the Brilliant Machines campaign that GE is running on TV with the car from Knight Rider talking to the train, a little robot talking to the plane. This stuff is all extremely real. Here's another example. Some of you may have seen the video where ASICs put RFID tags on people's shoes when they register at a marathon. And when they're running along the route, a sensor picks up that RFID tag, and if someone has recorded a personal video greeting to you, it plays on the Jumbotron right there where you can see it at that point on the course. And people say things like, this completely changed my experience of running a race. It wasn't me all alone anymore. It was me with my community. It was me with my friends, my family, my coworkers, whatever. Best marathon ever. What did they do? They said, why are people doing this? You don't run a marathon to get from the starting point back to the starting point after 2.5 hours of pain. That is not actually the objective. The objective is the sense of experience and achievement in which you are reinforced by a community of people you like and respect and love and whatever. And so they said, let's build on that. Let's use connectivity to turn that experience into something richer than it ever was without that connectivity. That's the kind of thinking that's going to revolutionize markets. So, Virgin America. What does Virgin sell? On the airplanes, I mean. They sell you the use of a seat to get you from one place to another, right? Except that's a terrible business. Seats are made by the same companies. They're in planes made by the same companies. They fly through the same air, land at the same airports, operated by the same air traffic controllers. You can't make any money in that business, and most of them don't. Qantas makes more than 50% of its profits from its loyalty points program. That's what they do. A pure branding exercise built around an airline brand. But that's a commodifiable business. What they do is turn that into the nucleus of something that is differentiable in the marketplace. Now, I use the Qantas example with a particular emphasis because at one point when I was in Australia, there was a local movement that said, oh no, we shouldn't be exporting our high-tech jobs by using Amazon Web Services and Google and Salesforce.com and all these American companies. We should be building Australian clouds. Now, needless to say, Fujitsu is happy to go from selling our CRM as a service in Europe to going to Australia and sell them servers. Perfectly happy to do that. And I wrote a fairly stiff blog post saying, why do you want to pay tribute to the empires of infrastructure? Why do you want to send money to other countries who will send you hardware and software that's utterly undifferentiating so that you can take your truly scarce resource of your technical talent and have 85% of it go into just making that non-differentiating stuff work? This would be exactly like Qantas saying, oh my gosh, we're flying Boeing and Airbus aircraft. We need Australian aircraft for Australian passengers. And if they tried really, really hard, maybe they could get up to the level where they were actually a substitute for Boeing and Airbus. And how would that help? It wouldn't help them build any differentiated brands. So when I'm in countries like Canada and Australia and Brazil that seem particularly concerned about whether the use of a global cloud services marketplace is going to depress their economies, I say, you've got it completely wrong. Let us chop your wood and draw your water while you build distinctive brands that can really take you to a global stage without taking 80% of your talent off the top just to run the stuff. We can do that for you. We can probably do it better than you can. And Virgin, by the way, this year, when you sit down, your screen is not just going to show you your choices of movie, it's going to greet you by name. It's going to know your frequent flyer program status. It's going to know if you've got a tight connection. It's going to assure you that your flight's not going to leave before you get there and that someone is going to meet you at the gate to escort you to your plane, if you're an elite Virgin frequent flyer. But they are going to be able to deliver a highly personalized experience precisely because of this kind of scalability and connectivity that just wasn't available before. Coca-Cola, same thing. What's Coca-Cola? Is it a beverage? Anyone seen a Coke Freestyle machine? 14 flavor essences, I think it's got. They're test marketing this in some markets. You go up and make your personal mix, give it a name, get a QR code that you can share on the mobile phone. There we are. And if your friends try your mix, wherever in the world they are, and like it, you get Coke loyalty points that you can use to buy Coke branded logoed merchandise. What's not to like? One of the world's absolutely most amazing brands because they've figured out you're not just selling a glass of beverage. You're selling a participation in an experience. They want to teach the world to sing. What can I tell you? GE, we've talked about this. The engine can say, I've got this pain down my left-hand side turbine blade. And the Boeing engineer, the GE engineer, and the airline engineer can all be collaborating while the plane's still in flight. So when the plane rolls up to the gate, they've got the test equipment ready, the technician ready to go through the test procedures. Maybe they've pre-positioned the spare parts. If you get a plane back in the air 1 hour sooner, what is that worth? I'm not sure, but I suspect it's a lot. More than the cost of a couple of microchips. Or, in a less serious vein, Men's Warehouse. It's expensive to have someone greet you at the door of a clothing store who has your entire personal history with that store. Knows what you bought last year that might be getting ready to wear out. Knows what you bought last week that you might still be accessorized. That would be a really cool thing to be able to do. And a very expensive thing to do. Until now. When someone with an iPad can have that history, can have the best available recommendations and suggestions. When in fact, a display in the store could say, hey, according to your phone, you're James, and last week you bought a suit, these shoes would go great with it. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. If it seems a little minority report to you, fine. A lot of people are really going to get into this. And when you walk into a store like Burberry, that's our other house brand, I'm glad that Men's Warehouse is among our house brands because wearing Burberry on stage every Dreamforce would get expensive. My kids shop at Men's Warehouse, thank you. But if you're walking into Burberry and when you're buying luxury stuff, you're not just doing it because it's better made. You want a sense of what you're getting is special. So now you can look at your phone and it knows what product you're looking at. It can show you the name and philosophical orientation of the sheet from which the wool was shorn. And it can tell you about the favorite color and favorite My Little Pony character of the person who sewed the garment. Whatever's going to make you have a sense of buying something special, they can do that for you because they know what they're selling. And this is not future stuff. This came out when? March 6th. Virgin says, we're going to get 0.5 terabyte of data per flight. Fortunately, they're not going to have to wade through it all with grep. They're going to be able to use tools like Chatter to have the interesting stuff get surfaced automatically to them in a conversationally oriented form that allows them to focus their attention on the stuff that demands attention. And that's what's key. You'll run into people who say, oh my gosh, social. It's a new inbox. It's a new silo. It's a fire hose of minutia. I'll never get any work done. I'm sorry, you're looking at it exactly the wrong way. A database is hard. A conversation is easy. A conversation driven by algorithms and sensors to say, look at this, dummy. This is what's actually important right now. That's very, very valuable. Every morning now, I get 50 Chatter digests in my inbox. And in the first hour of my day, I am up to date on the state of play in regional markets, in product lines, specific accounts and specific teams, specific technologies that we're developing. I know more about what's going on before I've had my second cup of coffee now than I used to know at 3 in the afternoon on a day-by-day basis. It's hard to imagine that we were able to get our work done any other way. you're talking about gathering an awful lot of data. It's one thing when I run into people who say, oh, it's safer in my environment. You guys are like, you know, they quote Willie Sutton, who never actually said this, but is widely quoted as having said, I rob banks because that's where the money is. They say, you guys are going to be the big target. I say, yeah. And you actually keep your money in what? Well, I keep it in a bank. Because even though they're a target, they actually do this better than a shoebox under your bed. And that's what we do too. Or you'll run into people who say, oh, this multi-tenancy thing. Dangerous commingling of data. I say, I'm sorry. Dangerous commingling. So you think that your bank spins up a separate instance of the database for your account? No. The account number is the only thing that's in there isolating your stuff from other people's stuff. And that is a proven method, and it works. And your credit card transactions are the same way, and your cell phone transactions are the same way. This is not a radical new idea. But what is key is to understand every virtual machine is its own separate opportunity to screw things up. If you've instantiated a VM template to run a quarterly reporting task, and you spin it up in June, then vulnerabilities that you might have patched out of the system in May might now suddenly get reintroduced into your network because they were calcified into that VM template. And the poltergeists are here, and it's back. And you can't do a head count on these servers. They're headless. And that is why the VM model is actually tremendously more labor-intensive and risky than the multi-tenancy model, in which I can count on a small sheet of paper the number of places where I have to fix something. We've only got several dozen pods. If it's fixed in several dozen places, it's fixed for everybody. It's fixed for 104,000 companies running 1 billion transactions a day. It's fixed in 24 hours. You simply can't make that statement about any IT model ever in the history of mankind, which is why the head of the National Security Agency, who have some expertise in this area, who have some resources and an unlimited budget to throw at this problem, said, if you were to look at the procedures we have for remediating zero-day threats, you would either laugh or vomit, depending on your mood. We are able to fix this stuff in a highly automated, highly scalable, highly governed, well-auditable way, and nothing else really can do that. And that's what Phil Wainwright was talking about when he says, when everybody's using the exact same stuff, fixing it and knowing it's fixed becomes a much more solvable problem. Now, the Yacht Racer was out there talking about this at his show a while ago, and the guys at Forrester just said they'd had enough. James Staten and John Reimer are two of the smartest people in the business today, and they said, I'm sorry, this myth cannot be allowed to promulgate one day longer. Not only is multi-tenancy not less secure, it's actually the opposite. It's more secure than the other models being promoted today. That ought to be the end of the story. It really should. At this point, if we had the facilities, I'd love to share with you a 4-minute video, but you can go out and Google it. Let me give you the setup. It opens with someone talking about the deadline day hitting. Hard to imagine it's finally here. Then one of the people working with the data saying, my gosh, we've got hundreds of thousands of things coming at us and we can't figure them all out. Then the third guy starts talking and says, you have to ask the question, what do we do to keep the president in office? And you realize you're listening to the team that ran Obama for America. Every 4 years in this country, we do an Olympics of IT called the presidential campaign. 2008 campaign, I realize this is going to be hard to believe, there were no iPads. There was no 4G to speak of. And that campaign was arguably won because one campaign used social media to raise money with an average contribution size of tens of dollars, while the other campaign had a much more expensive cost structure for a donation program that was more like in the hundreds and thousands of dollars for the average contribution. The first Obama campaign was won with social media. The second was won with mobile. They were able to do things like say, these 5 guys haven't voted in this precinct. They're all retired ex-military. You're the one who should call and do the get out the vote call for these 5 guys. They were able to do that. The other side did not use primarily Amazon and Salesforce.com. They built a battery of servers. They sent a If I remember correctly, it was a 30-page PDF attachment to their volunteers the night before Election Day with the instructions for using the system that they had never seen before. And then they screwed up the login protocols. And so you had tens of thousands of volunteers wandering around on Election Day afternoon not being able to log into the system that they didn't know how to use. I told this story at a conference, and one guy came up and said, I was a volunteer for the guy who went home instead of going back to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Everything you've read is true. It really was that bad. The Obama campaign built their plan on the use of cloud resources. They were able to treat October, not November, as their go-live date because they weren't spending time buying and tuning and integrating stuff. They were just building stuff. They were able to drill down to the zip code level if they were soft in a particular area. They were able to use mobile devices in a very aggressive way. And if you do the math on what the actual popular vote margins were in the battleground states in the selection, you'll realize that a leveling of the playing field on volunteer effectiveness on the ground on Election Day afternoon would have made it a much more exciting day. Much more exciting. So it's a 4-minute video. It's out there on YouTube. I encourage you to look at it because you will hear words that many people are not accustomed to associating with this cloud thing. You'll hear them say, we couldn't have done this without the maturity of cloud platforms. We couldn't have done this if cloud platforms didn't give us API-level integration with everything we wanted to build. No, we had no concerns about the security. It's extraordinarily validating, especially when they say, yeah, we basically had to build a Fortune 500-sized company in 7 months. So tell me again, what's the task you're doing that's so sensitive, so confidential, so secure, so rapidly scaled, and so critical that you can't do it on this cloud thing? Because if you think that you've got stuff that's more in any of those attributes, let alone all of them, than electing a president, I'd really love to know what it is. It's got to be fighting off alien invasion or something. So, increasingly we're able not to talk about cloud computing, which is wonderful. We're able not to have arguments about multi-tenancy. We're able to avoid data center modernization initiatives that are presented to the board of directors as a private cloud because that way you can get the money to build them. We can talk about why. Here's the why. Windows XP had 51% market share on its 10th birthday. Roughly $12 billion spent to build Vista and Windows 7, which Windows 7 in particular, clearly a much better operating system than XP, and yet XP still has more than half the market 10 years after it started. Why? Because the frictional burdens of implementation, regression testing, hardware refresh, and so on were simply too much to overcome. And in the mobile device marketplace, you can't tolerate a 10-year technology cycle because it's more like a 5-month technology cycle. Between Qualcomm chipsets and Android variants, the mobile device life cycle is actually less than 5 months. If you use the old methods in a virtualized environment, you're still using the old methods for application development. And they will take you an average of 8 months to build an application, and that doesn't work in a 5-month cycle world. You will either be delivering subset capability or you'll be generation skipping. Either way, your users will not be getting the experience they want to get. You simply must enlist a cloud platform as your productivity partner to make that happen. You simply cannot sacrifice the talent required to do monthly Patch Tuesday bombs and quarterly security updates, let alone every 3-year, quote, upgrades, unquote, that require new hardware, complete regression testing of all your customizations, and so on. I call that the wet steaming pile of code on your doorstep model of upgrade. It doesn't work very well. Ramon Baez was the CIO at Kimberly-Clark last May. He's now at Hewlett-Packard, another great Salesforce.com customer, where oddly enough he's got a similar problem, which is how do you liberate the latent value of an SAP infrastructure by using cloud resources. Well, last May he was talking about Kimberly-Clark. And he was saying, oh yeah, we're a huge SAP shop. Why, for example, just this coming Memorial Day, we're going to be rolling out ERP6. And a little bell rang in the back of my head, and I said, why does that sound so odd? And I remembered. I went back and checked my notes to confirm. 3 years earlier, I'd been doing a keynote at the World Financial Symposium talking about the survey that had just come out of Europe, where users of SAP ERP6 had been saying, oh yeah, we're probably going to have some data loss. We know we're going to have to do major hardware refresh. They're moving to Unicode for all the databases, so they'll all roughly double in size. Our multi-terabyte storage is going to have to roughly double. That's all on us, of course. And here's Kimberly-Clark, one of the world's premier brands, 3 years later, finally ready to bite down hard and burn a holiday weekend doing the final rollout. During those 3 years, our customers got 9 upgrades. They didn't do any hardware refresh unless they wanted to. They didn't regression test their customizations because it was our job to make them roll forward. Talk about a contrast between old model and new. And now you know why I don't hesitate to use a word like Chernobyl. Delivering to mobile devices. I've already made it clear. These are the growth model. This is how people want to interact with them. In fact, increasingly, it's not even about thinking about a device. They just want the resource available. Corning Glass did a video called A Day Made of Glass. In fact, they did a second part. There's 2 Corning videos out there. They're wonderful because people aren't thinking about their devices. They're just interacting with an environment in which information is presented and function is intermediated wherever they are, whatever they're doing. They're not thinking about stuff. They drag an image from their handheld out to the table in front of them. Just today, when I was updating the deck I'm going to do tomorrow to keynote over at Forum, I hit save, and then I went to make a copy onto the USB stick because I thought we might be using the machine here, and it wasn't in my documents directory. I thought, where did I just save it to? And then I realized that last night I deployed the beta of Chatterbox, which is our completely secure Dropbox-like capability, and now I don't really need to think about what device my stuff is on anymore, because if Chatterbox is my default storage device, it's on my phone, it's on my laptop, whatever, I'm not going to think about it anymore. Yes, I know that Dropbox has been around for a while, so has my chief trust officer, who's not a complete fan. But the point is, any context you're in, this is also a vital point for one simple reason. I hear more and more people say, oh gosh, we got to start building some mobile apps. No, you don't. If you say to a developer, I want you to build some mobile apps, you will get mobile apps. Now you've got new apps with new data stores, parallel implementations of business logic, more maintenance stuff to do. This is the question you should instead be asking. How do I take all of my existing apps and construct an appropriate mobile experience for that app? I've got a desktop experience. It's probably hardwired and hard-coded to a desktop experience. Maybe you're lucky and you use Visualforce, and so you've got model view controller architecture, and all you have to do is re-architect the UX. You must immediately begin, if you have not already done so, decoupling. What's the data? What's the logic? What's the user experience? So that any one of them can be updated without breaking the others. Because that's the only way you're going to be able to keep up with this demand that people have to say, I need a car-appropriate experience in my car, I need a handheld experience appropriate on my tablet, I need a desktop-appropriate experience on my laptop or my desk, and I need a war room-appropriate experience when I've got a wall full of screens and 100 people working on it. And all of these things need to come off of a common root of data and logic and integration with other resources. You should not be saying, how do we build some mobile apps? You should be saying, how do we add a new mobile-appropriate experience to our existing application portfolio? And you should be taking advantage of an applications marketplace like the App Exchange. We are now certifying all of our field people not only to represent our stuff, but to know the 10 key apps on the App Exchange and be able to talk about those with equal authority, because they're a tremendously important part of our value proposition. If you don't know the great apps that will simply snap in and immediately begin working in a secure, validated way with full leverage and reuse of your existing data and so on, then you really don't know Salesforce as a portfolio. And if you don't have an applications ecosystem, then you really don't have a cloud platform. You've got a virtualization and an outsourcing of an old IT model that doesn't have that kind of synergy. So that's why the Google Apps Application Store, that's why Apple's App Store, that's why App Exchange. These are all absolutely necessary parts of calling something a true cloud environment. And finally, when I started with this company 6 years ago, people would say, oh, I get SaaS. It's for little companies that don't have real IT. But once you've got a real IT department, you're not going to put up with the compromises. That's what they said 6 years ago. 2 years ago, people would say to me, well, I understand cloud computing for companies with really big requirements where they need to handle, big bursts of traffic like, Super Bowl ads and things. But how does this apply to the little company? Complete swing of the pendulum. And oddly enough, during that entire time, we were still one-third, one-third, one-third. 5-person companies, 50-person companies. When I joined the company 6 years ago, Cisco was our first 5-figure deployment with 50,000 users. Now we've got one of the world's premier food brands with 300,000 people on chat. We've got many with 6-figure user accounts. It's not particular news. I think, I forget what we said in the last quarterly call about how many 8- and 9-figure deals we've done. It's just not a big deal. But we're still 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. We're still, 1% of our stuff being used by nonprofits. One of them's Teach for America, which I have particularly top of mind right now because my middle son just accepted a 2-year hitch with them to go teach math in Oakland, which I think is really cool. I'm really excited about that, and so is he. The key point is that any organization in any part of the world of any size should now be thinking about using this stuff. This also, by the way, is the fatal flaw in the cloud positioning of some legacy IT vendors who say, yeah, we're going to have a cloud offering. That'll be our mid-market product. Okay, so it's too big to start with it, and it's not big enough to grow with it. It just sort of sits in the middle, and it's not really connected with the rest of your portfolio. I don't understand that logic at all. I want to be able to start with it, grow with it, stay with it, and use as much functionality as I care to pay for, no matter what size I have. So this is our messaging now. We rolled this out in public at the Waldorf Astoria on May 26th. We are not talking about cloud except as an enabler. We are not talking about social except as a behavioral ideal. We are talking about why. We are talking about connecting to your customer because your customer will actively participate with you in improving your products and services as soon as they know that you're listening and as soon as they see that you're responding. You turn a critic into an advisor, and an advisor into an advocate into a zealot by showing them you're listening, demonstrating that you're paying attention, and rewarding them for their contributions. It's not a complicated process, and the companies that do it well turn into the world's iconic brands. Brands like Apple and BMW clearly are something more than just the product that they sell to the people who are really invested in those brands. So yeah, connecting with the customer is critical. Connecting with the partners, because there are so many things now where you should be working with partners. You should, for example, we've talked about Boeing. Spare parts for Boeing aircraft are relatively rarely needed. You don't break the landing gear that often. But when you do it, you really want to be sure that you've optimized the place where you can get the spare parts. Boeing could do that. I think it's FedEx that Boeing actually partners with. And they say to FedEx, we're going to outsource the whole job of global spare parts logistics to you guys. We're going to pay you for performance. You guys figure out where to keep the inventories. That's smart thinking. Look for differential expertise and competence and take advantage of service relationships to do that. Connect with the product. Mark was at CES a while ago, Consumer Electronics Show. One of the first things he said when he came out is, you really have to wonder, what the heck am I doing? But then he started talking about the need for products to start connecting back with the company. Now, at this year's CES, it was really kind of cool because not only were the products themselves getting smarter, the products were getting more connected. Many more products now that understood you wanted to use your iPhone to check on the state of a load in your dryer. Things like that. And Mark was saying, no, but you got to go beyond that. I shouldn't have a display on my dryer that tells me it needs maintenance. I should have a call from Samsung that says, your dryer says it needs maintenance, may we schedule that for you? That's connecting the product. Now, this is why this is really important. A while ago, GM was having engine fires in some of its pickup trucks for a reason that had been fully addressed by a recall issued 3 years earlier, but way less than half the trucks had had that recall work done. Now, the engine fires were current news and bad for the GM brand. They weren't good for the customer. The customer, could have gotten that work done free. Didn't get done. Anything you can do to tighten that connection between company, customer, and product, so proactive measures for fault recognition and remediation get done before they become big, embarrassing, expensive stories and nuisances and maybe even dangerous situations for the customer. This is all absolutely direct to the bottom line of the company. If you can move the loyalty needle of your customer base by 1%, that can be worth tens of millions of dollars in some industries. That's why connected products are more than just Tom Swift and his amazing electronic dishwasher. That's why they are the future of building high-value brands. And connected employees. Why is this important? Anyone seen the video of the cable service rep who fell asleep on the sofa? Anyone seen the video, United Breaks Guitars? Anyone seen, the tweet that began the global campaign that forced Bank of America to withdraw, in my opinion, perfectly reasonable debit card servicing fee? Because people said, but it's my money. Well, yeah, we are taking care of, but it's my money. Okay, anyway, it worked as a campaign. Every person who represents your company in any capacity whatsoever is now the avatar of your brand. You sell an appliance, guy in a nice crisp suit and tie, great handshake, good smile, he spends 10 minutes with the customer. Then they own the device for 10 years and they see a service rep for half an hour every 2 or 3 years. Who's the face of the brand? It's the service rep. Who had better be empowered to do something nice for the customer if they're 2 hours late for their appointment? They shouldn't need to go back to headquarters. They shouldn't need to say, here's a card you can call, they'll do something for you. No, 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 no. You push the power to resolve the problem and delight the customer out to the edge of the network in every possible way. But that means every person in the company needs to be able to call on any resource in the company that's required to do that. That's why connected products and connected customers imply connected team members. Got to do it. Got to do the whole thing. Or the social behavior will not be supported. So what does that have to do with us? Because everyone knows what we do. We do CRM, right? That's what people think we do. And at the risk of overusing the automotive analogy, but I did just spend 8 months in a temporary role as our CTO to get our new automotive practice underway. It made me realize that our CRM is the steering wheel. It's the thing you touch. It does a fairly simple thing, and it should do it in a very simple way. It should be giving you feedback about what kind of road you're on. It really is the steering wheel of your sales and marketing and servicing operation. That's very important. But it's certainly not the car. Because underneath is the database, which we only had the brains to productize as a separate offering with the database.com offering a few years ago. We said, really the thing we've built, nobody else has, is this enormously scalable, highly reliable, strongly manageable, auditable database that's underneath everything else. This is, by the way, different. If you go and look at some of the cloud offerings of legacy vendors, their cloud stuff isn't actually underneath their on-demand products. Their on-demand products live on a completely separate stack. But we and Amazon and Google are alike in that we actually run on the same things that we sell to other people. And in the middle is this Force.com platform, which many people don't realize. We have 4 completely separate studies that all agree within one decimal place. You build the apps 5 times faster. I do mean that. You get something done with 20 hours of developer time that takes 100 hours to do with tools like Java and .NET. And this is still a hugely underappreciated story, even though we've had this data for more than 3 years. And the result, well, that's the steering wheel from a McLaren F1 car. It's still a steering wheel. It still does simple things in a simple way. But it's also got a whole lot more controls on it, where you can do a whole lot of really cool stuff. And so sales, service, the marketing cloud, which we can talk about at great length, the Work.com product, the whole app exchange system, all of these things come together in a way that really changes cloud from being cheaper IT to being something much more interesting. And when I look across that portfolio, I don't spend a lot of time outside platform space. When I look at Sales Cloud, when I look at the companies using it, NBC Universal, one of the world's premier brands, they really didn't have a CRM system until last year. They deployed their first CRM. I talked to a guy named John Hope at the Waldorf Astoria event. He says, yeah, it was really my job to put CRM into a company that never thought it had it before. Their estimate is that they got a 140-fold payback in the first year for the cost of deploying that CRM tool. Because now they're able to sell the 33 different brands that NBC Universal in aggregate represents as an integrated system. Service Cloud, a relatively new business for us, but if you look at the companies that are redefining what they do, and Terasys, what do? They do networking hardware. What's social about that? What's social about it is that the device can tell the mothership that something weird is going on, and they can reach out proactively to the customer and say, we think we need to do a firmware update on your router. Is it okay if we do that at 2 in the morning? They can initiate service instead of just reacting. Marketing Cloud, a relatively new thing. We bought Radian 6, which was already doing sentiment management for 55% of the Fortune 100. We bought Bunny Media, which is already managing a huge slice of the advertising spend on Facebook. Put them together with Sales Cloud, and now we've got Marketing Cloud, which allows you to manage advertising campaigns, measuring what's working and what's not, and fine-tuning them in near real time. It's going to be an enormously important change in the way people do this stuff. Work.com, boy, don't we own some great brands. Database.com, Work.com, what's not to like about domains like that? We just finished drinking our own champagne on Work.com. We just finished our first ever internal performance cycle using nothing but this tool. My gosh, the difference between trying to write someone's performance summary by looking at emails and being able to go into Work.com and say, wow, here are the badges that people threw them over the course of the year for cool things they had done. Here are the certifications they completed. It changes things a lot. And it turns performance appraisal from this dreadful hoop of fire exercise that we do once a year into just sort of a constant environment of, I'm going to be getting feedback, giving feedback. It makes it less scary, and that means it's going to get done more. So we're really excited about the implications that that's going to have and about the companies that are using it already. Chatter is widely misunderstood and thought to be a conversational tool, and therefore just like other conversational tools out there in the marketplace, one of which just got recently bought by a Seattle-based software company. And if you use it as nothing but a conversational tool, you won't be understanding. I tell people it's like buying a chainsaw and taking it home and starting to do this with it without ever starting the engine. Yes, it will cut, but you will wonder what all the fuss was about. Then you turn on the engine and you say, oh, that's what it's for. The fact that Chatter can have conversations initiated by an event in your ERP system, initiated by an event in your financials, initiated by the fact that a document was just updated. And instead of you having to notice something and start talking about it, the problem starts the conversation. That's vital. And then customer groups, which replace things like email interaction with the equivalent of a private break room for you and your team and a customer to sit down and talk anytime you need to, it completely changes things. And our own people just say that once they had customer groups available in Chatter, email started to look like message in a bottle interaction. You just don't do that anymore. And then there's the platform, which obviously is my primary love. It's why I came to work for the company, to get people talking about cloud as a platform. And I've already made it clear why I think it's important to think of the cloud as your platform. And I do mean the cloud in the general sense, because most of our customers doing significant platform work also use Amazon resources, also use other external resources, and we're great with that. My goal is to get you thinking of the cloud as your supermarket, and think of on-premise IT as the equivalent of going out in the backyard and starting to dig ditches for potatoes. Maybe you'll get something, maybe you won't. So that's the big picture. The fact that it all fits on one slide when you put it all together is still kind of unusual. I've asked some of our people to try to draw that same diagram for some of the other offerings out there. I expect the result to be a little less organized. The fact that it starts with that database product, which you're free to use and not use anything else, that's important. Yes, there's the business applications-oriented stuff, but there's also Heroku if you just want to run some completely standard code. Chatter, which is very much part of the platform. It's really critical to see. Chatter's not an application that lives on top of it. It really is part of the platform. Data.com, which I barely even mentioned, but some people say that's what really transforms things. Is when data grooming and data quality improvement are at the point of use. When you touch a contact record, it says, okay, I could do that for you, but I don't think he works there anymore. But here's the guy who replaced him in that role, and by the way, here are the 3 peers also at the VP level that I know about in that account. Should I add them to the account record for you, sir? That's data grooming in a way that people actually use. All the stuff across the top, the fact that it's mainly interesting because of the enormous value it can add to your existing spend, and the fact that it's able to pull in all of the other tremendously interesting stuff that's happening in external networks through a coherent identity management interface. It's a really exciting story to be part of. It's why our community is growing at the rate that it is. I hope that it's delivering value for you, and if it's not, I really hope you will take advantage of this opportunity to be very rude to me indeed and tell me just how full of it I am. Because if any of this isn't working for you, if any of this is not real for you, I really want to know. I really want to know what is getting in the way of this doing for you the things that I've seen it do for so many other companies. And thank you for your time. Since this room commits the